phones are getting good, and good phones are getting cheap. That is a really good thing. No, to be honest, let's see. If you want a phone, a cheap phone with a high refresh rate, it's available. A hole punch display, available. Pop-up camera, in-screen fingerprint reader, really fast storage, really fast charging, a huge battery, decent camera, A+ camera, really fast processor. All of these are available today for really cheap. So it's actually quite important that we look at this section of smartphones, which is the budget king. Now that's the purpose of this series. What we're going to do is consider, from past years as well as present, the best smartphones for cheap. Now it's going to be divided into parts. Promises to be actually very fun and interesting series. The very first is an iPhone. And I know what you're thinking already, but it's not. We're actually looking at the iPhone 8 Plus. Now before we continue though, I would like to mention that we're looking at just 5 categories. Okay, we're concentrating on just 5 categories. The first would be price. The second would be performance. We have design, battery, and then camera. Because for most people, for most consumers, these are the only 5 things that are actually important. So the very first is the iPhone 8 Plus. It's a weird one actually. It's priced currently around $350 to $500. Performance-wise, it has an A11 Bionic chip with 3 GB of RAM. Now, 3 GB of RAM does sound a little bit small, and the A11 is not the A13, but forget it, the iPhone 8 Plus is faster than most Android smartphones today. So in terms of performance, app opening, fluidity, you're not going to have any issues with the 8 Plus. Next would be design. It's an iPhone. Like, it's seriously just an iPhone, and that is enough reason for most people to actually buy the 8 Plus. It's a 5.5-inch 1080p LCD display with a screen-to-body ratio of 67.4%. So yes, it still has humongous bezels, you know, really huge top head and a really huge chin, but it's an iPhone. It's the iPhone 8 Plus. It's premium, like seriously premium. It also has a glass back and supports wireless charging, but you know, the major thing is it's an iPhone. Next would be battery. It has a 2691 mAh battery, and I guess that is not great. Like, yes, because Apple makes its own chipset and all, it has this integration which helps with battery performance and all of that stuff, but generally speaking, the 8 Plus, you would struggle to end the day with the phone still alive at all. Next would be cameras. Now, because it's an iPhone, it has great cameras. It has a 12 megapixel main lens and a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. Shots on the iPhone 10, on the 8 Plus rather, would look really good. Period. Disadvantages of the 8 Plus, or cons of the 8 Plus. Well, one, the SE 2020. Like, without a doubt, the only reason you're going to go with the 8 Plus over the SE 2020 is because of its size. If you're someone who wants a bigger phone, then yes, you're going the 8 Plus. But if not, the SE 2020 is better than the 8 Plus. Second would be the fact that you're most likely getting it used. So battery health is the major issue you're going to have, because the older the battery gets, the worse it becomes. Software support. Now, because the 8 Plus is 2 or 3 years old, that means it has about 2 years left on its lifespan of software support. So that is actually a disadvantage if you're someone who's looking to keep your phone, the 8 Plus, for a longer period of time. So yeah, that's it for the 8 Plus. The iPhone SE 2, or the iPhone SE 2020, it's definitely, for most people, the smartphone to go. The only reason you're not going with the iPhone SE 2020 is simply because of its size. It's a smaller iPhone. But anyway, let's just go ahead and talk about those 5 categories. So one, price, it's retails around $400. That's the initial lowest base model, $400, which is pretty cheap. It has the A13 Bionic chip, which is by Apple fastest chipset on any phone, period. It also has 3 gigabytes of RAM. So yes, let's just not even fudge about it. The iPhone SE 2020 performance wise is a beast. It's a beast. Moving on from performance, design, still just like the 8 Plus, it's an iPhone, and for most people that is enough. It has a glass back, also supports wireless charging. The SE 2020 is premium. I mean, for a really cheap phone, it is premium because of that Apple logo. Moving on from design, we have battery. It has an 1821 milliamp hour battery, which on an Android would be bonkers. But Apple still says it could last up to 13 hours. Give or take 10 hours, the iPhone SE 2020 is really good battery wise because of the small screen and the fact that it's an LCD. Moving on, it has a 12 megapixel sensor. It only has one main camera and one main lens, which also supports portrait mode. But anyway, it's an iPhone, it shoots really well. So camera wise, the iPhone SE 2020 is pretty good. The only con I would mention is it looks like an older generation iPhone, and the size. If you're someone who doesn't want huge bezels on their smartphones, you're not looking at the SE 2020. And lastly, if you're someone who just wants a bigger phone, you're not looking at the SE 2020. But other than that, the iPhone SE is really, really good, especially because you're getting a brand new. That's it. Next would be a Samsung phone now. We're looking at the S9 Plus. This is a phone I've actually reviewed on the channel. I'll leave a link in the description or put a card somewhere. But yeah, the S9 Plus retails for around $300 to $500. I will be putting the best deals on all of these smartphones in the description below, so make sure you check it out. Processor wise, it has the Exynos 9810 and 6 gigabytes of RAM. It's fast. Design wise, well, it's a Samsung flagship, so we have a glass sandwich, so glass back, glass front, aluminium rails, aluminium frame. So yeah, definitely a premium looking smartphone. It also has Gorilla Glass 5. It's a 1440p AMOLED display and has a screen to body ratio of 84.2%. So it looks modern. It has really tiny bezels, maybe not tiny, but small bezels, and a really, really good quality screen. I mean, seriously, Samsung makes one of the best screens on any smartphone, period. It also has a 3500 milliamp hour battery. Now, because it's a 1440p OLED and because it's a huge screen, the battery is its downside. So yes, it has 3500 milliamp hours, but you would struggle to complete a day without the phone actually dying. Moving on from battery, we have camera. It has a 12 megapixel main lens, a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. We know Samsung, I mean, they make these vibrant, punchy looking photos and video. So yeah, there you go. Camera wise, it's an A+, or an A. Probably an A, yeah. Cons of the S9 Plus, like you're getting it used, and with getting phones used, battery would suffer. Next, software support. Now the S9 Plus is 2 years old now, so I think that's about it, generally speaking. Now we're moving on to another Samsung device. We will not ever look towards this direction, but Samsung in 2020 and I think 2019 really stepped up their game in the A series lineup. We're looking at the Samsung Galaxy A70. It costs around $350. It has the Snapdragon 675 chipset with 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now the 675 is definitely not the 875, but it's still fast. I mean, you're not going to have issues opening apps, multitasking, all of that stuff would be fine on the A70. It is not a Samsung flagship. It has a plastic back as well as a plastic frame, so you know. It has a 6.7-inch 1080p AMOLED display with a screen to body ratio of 86%. The front of the phone looks great. Design wise, I would say a 7 out of 10. It has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, so battery is great. On the A70, it has 3 cameras, a 32 megapixel wide lens, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So there's ultra wide on the A70. Of all the phones that we've looked at so far today, none of them have the ultra wide. So if you're someone who wants an ultra wide, there you go. Megapixels don't equal quality. We all know this. So just because the A70 has a 32 megapixel sensor doesn't mean it has great camera. It's an okay camera, a B plus camera. So, just something to mention. But in terms of options, the A70, yeah, it does have the option of the ultra wide as well as the depth sensor. Cons of the A70: software support. For every Samsung phone, this is generally a problem, but because it's a 2020 smartphone, it would have software support for at least 2 years, I believe, and it is running Samsung's latest One UI 2.0. So yeah, it looks like one of the modern smartphones. That's good. Low light, and this is a cheaper Samsung phone. It's not a flagship. Camera, like I said, wouldn't be as great as the flagships, so low light really suffers on the A70. There is no optical image stabilization or EIS, so that isn't good in terms of video. The A70 is quite poor. Inconsistent and slow fingerprint reader. The A70 has an in-screen fingerprint reader, which sounds really cool. That such cheap phones actually have this technology, but it's quite inconsistent and slow. That's not good. So yeah, that's the A70. It's improved, but could still improve. But if you're someone who just wants a Samsung phone, a brand new Samsung smartphone for cheap, the A70 is actually a pretty good buy. The next episode of this series would be a bit more diverse. We're going to try and have as many different kinds of smartphones as possible. But yeah, that's been it for today. The A Plus, the SE2, the S9 Plus, and the Samsung A70. Bye.